Whoa. Dawn began to ascend over the Whiteley mansion, followed soon by a morning lacking in both a scrumptious breakfast and aromatic tea. The very first thing I was greeted with, quite understandably, and at the same time to my hungry stomach lamentably, was police questioning.
What? Jack Millers was here? Wasn't he taking leave?
He is, currently. I was surprised to see him. I won't mention that he had giant claw things on his hands.
Well, this is lovely. We're still no closer to confirming whether Jack Millers and Jack the Ripper are the same person. All we have confirmed is that police security is easily broken by a boy of 17.
Dang.
And you say you saw him, Watson. I did. I was worried about Emily, so I came here to see how she was doing. I couldn't believe my eyes. There must have been 10 officers standing guard, but none saw him. Then we have counting 20 servants within, all on watch. How did he do it? A good question. That he duped the police is nothing, but to fool Pendleton, that is shocking. That is baseless slander! How can you imply that maids and a butler make for better guards than officers of the yard?
Moving on. Holmes is just moving swiftly on.
So, what reason did Jack come here? How did he get inside? I'll answer. Lady Whiteley spotted him at her window. Upon confirming his identity, she opened it and allowed him inside.
Holmes made his disapproval apparent upon responding. What?
That was rather careless of you, wasn't it?
But he's our friend!
They passed a short amount of time reminiscing. After which, he was adamant in his persuasions that she leave the mansion as soon as possible. He'd mentioned her life was in danger. Do I have the right of it, my lady?
Yes. Everything so far is correct. We'll just not mention that you tried to shoot him.
This helps us paint a fine picture, but if we could hear Lady Whiteley's perspective directly...
I regret that she has become deeply traumatized by this incident. Ah, but I did miss a detail. He stole your handkerchief before leaving through the window, did he not?
Nonsense! He didn't steal it. I lent it to him.
Well, that makes little difference. Regardless, I made to shoot him, but I don't believe the bullet made contact.
It does make a difference, because he's not a thief. I gave him my handkerchief. I do hope it didn't. I prefer he wasn't hurt. My one hope is that your aim has become less dependable by the year, but I still can't be too sure.
Ahem. My lady.
Ah! How rude of me.
I hadn't realized until hearing this story how unusually friendly you are with the culprit.
Don't be silly! Worrying about a schoolmate is far from unusual.
My point was that I witnessed him as well. In her bedroom, no less. That's confirmation enough for me. Now, I should like to go through the incident one more time.
Holmes then fell silent to reflect before launching into a summary of the night's events. Alright, here we go. Hit me with it.
Around 1 a.m., Jack Millers bypassed the police and reached the outside of Miss Whiteley's bedroom window on the first floor. How he managed to do so without detection remains unknown. What we do know is that upon seeing him, he was invited in by none other than Miss Whiteley herself, who saw him as a friend. Their reunion lasted roughly below a half hour, and they discovered the matter of her being in danger as mentioned earlier. They discussed the matter of her being in danger as mentioned earlier.
Whew, man, that was a disaster of a sentence.
Pendleton, upon detecting something amiss, entered Miss Whiteley's room and encountered her with Jack. He attempted to fire a bullet, but failed to land his target. Jack then escaped through the same window he entered, fleeing the scene entirely. During all of this, a woman was murdered in the East End's Whitechapel around 1 a.m. She was identified as Miss Elizabeth Stride. Whilst there were no apparent injuries to the abdominal region, her neck was slashed deeply from one side to the other, matching the Ripper's previous murders. What sets this night apart is the second murder, committed almost immediately after Miss Stride's. The second victim, killed approximately 30 minutes later at Aldgate, has been identified as Miss Catherine Eddowes. She, too, had her throat cut horizontally, with her chest also sliced open vertically and her organs removed. Again, very similar to the Ripper's previous murders. What gives me pause is that Jack Millers visited Miss Whiteley between 1 a.m. and 1:30 a.m., coinciding with the timing of the two murders. In other words, our suspect has an ironclad alibi.
All the shock.
We have more than enough witnesses to conclude as much. Precisely. Even discounting those of the mansion I saw myself.
I'm glad that your word has much more weight than ours. Thanks, Watson. The summary had left the room stunned. Holmes, who was reputable for his skill in seeing any criminal activity through an objective lens, had spoken so eloquently to Jack's defense that he almost sounded the part of a lawyer. Yet there was no counter.
Yes, well, we noticed that as well, of course. Jack Millers does indeed have a strong alibi, which would render it impossible for him to commit last night's murders. My main concern is that these testimonies come from those close to him. I cannot easily accept them as fact, as you each have some reason to defend him, be it intentional or instinctive.
Are you mad? The man was happy to step into a woman's bedroom in the middle of the night. Why would I jump to his defense?
I mean, valid point.
We were schoolmates, yes, but he barely said a word to any of us. He was no friend of mine. That I can promise you.
Interesting. Then would you describe your relationship as poor?
As poor as you can imagine.
Watson heaved his shoulders in an indignant, exaggerated manner. Too exaggerated for my personal liking.
I can't pretend to have been that friendly with him either. Was never fond of the way he glared at people.
That's rich coming from you.
After Miss Whiteley joined the class, I did find myself talking to him on the every odd occasion, but that was all. We barely discussed much of anything before then.
And you, Pendleton?
I am the same. We've spoken very little, and I am repulsed by his breaking into Lady Whiteley's room. As the head of this family, it is my duty to protect her with my life. Why in God's name would I seek to defend such an indelicate hoodlum?
Of course. Completely understandable. My apologies for misunderstanding the situation, but this makes for valuable testimony.
Inspector Lestrade offered a hand in solidarity, to which Pendleton was the first to accept. Any form of awkward accusations or offense taken was done away with. If you can believe Pendleton's face.
Now then, I must be going. Should anything else occur, do contact us straight away.
Of course. In turn, I shall entrust the safety of this mansion to you and your guard. I bid you good luck in the race to catch Jack the Ripper.
All were warned from last night's events, with some officers even rubbing at their eyes as they drifted back to their posts.
Oh, what a farce this has been. Although we were sorely lacking in options to begin with.
Thank you. Truly, thank you.
What I said was the absolute truth, you know. When I see Jack next, I swear I'm giving him a hell of a talking to.
At least you'll actually talk to him for a change. Pew, 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 pew.
He should be ashamed of himself. Just what was he planning to do after sneaking into your room if he hadn't been caught?
I don't understand.
A man like that can only have ulterior motives. With that mug? Oh, he about screams depraved from the rooftops. Don't you see it, Emily? Watson, stop asking inappropriate questions of a young woman, or you'll have exposed yourself as a lesser man. Oh.
You knew the inspector would dismiss your testimony if you didn't outright deny your relations with Jack. That's why you said all those things.
That's half the truth. The other half was genuine, though. I don't know how to feel after seeing you defend him so earnestly.
Watson continued with motions similar to when he was being questioned by the inspector, waving his hands and making crude facial expressions in accompaniment. Does that mean you weren't acting then? You're angry with him.
Well, for all our differences, I did see him as a friend of sorts. And I do know he's involved in some sensitive affairs he can't discuss with us, but that doesn't turn his lie into the truth, does it? That story of his illness was a load of rubbish. I think it's normal to be angry.
I suppose you're right, she says with a very happy face. I was pleased by Watson's answer. His frankness was, as it had always been in the past, refreshing. I'd been so afraid. I don't know what I would have done had Jack been the Ripper all this time.
Huh. Well, dismiss it freely. He has been proven innocent in this matter. And the threat in that letter never came to pass. Let us not rest our laurels, however. The culprit may have had a simple change in plans. The Ripper case is far from over, yes. We'll see more from him before long. Ah, but we can rightly celebrate Miss Whiteley's safety. You being alive and well is what matters most.
Thank you again, Holmes, Watson. I'm so happy you protected Jack. I'm still astounded at how straightforward Holmes is. To actually say, you know what, Miss Whiteley's safety is more important than catching the criminal is something that astonishes me, quite frankly.
I don't know if I would put it that way. It's good of you to say as much, my lady. You were so adamant to come to his defense that your testimony surely holds no value.
Yes, well, I could do with learning to better hide how I feel. I couldn't help but avert my gaze and look down at the ground. I was embarrassed by my actions, but that was not the whole of it. More than embarrassed, I was reminded anew how good those around me were to help me when I needed it most.
That should be enough for today. We'll call if we find anything new.
Holmes and Watson made with quick goodbyes before turning to leave the mansion. Oh, thank you again. I'm glad you were here.
It was our pleasure. We'll always try to be there if you need anything. Have you not already thanked us plenty?
But it will never be enough. Shall I do as Jack said and run? If I do, I won't see Holmes and Watson for a while. Nor would I be able to see Jack. I had been left alone to reflect within my bird cage once again. Shall this bird fly away? To be continued. Before the Fog Lifts. That's an appropriate title. Nice. Dawn had not yet awakened over London's East End. As such, its dismal streets were barren, save for a single boy who slinked through in a depressed manner.
I couldn't follow the Colonel's order.
He bit down on his bottom lip.
It was just us. I could have easily done it had I wished to. But I didn't wish it. I don't wish to kill her. Not following orders is a first, but it only takes one time for him to suspect I ain't worth the trouble, and she would be next. Damn it all. What can I do? There must be something. Some way out of this I ain't thought of yet. Something other than killing her.
As the shadows around him slowly faded with the sun, Jack thought back to his brief time with Emily, who was his son. It made him recall that he still had her handkerchief, which he observed once more to grant him a moment of peace between panic. It was a beautiful piece of fabric, soft, elegant, like her. It reminded him of pleasant times, as well as the kindness she did not hesitate to show him.
She's never run from me, even at my worst. She saw me murder a man, and all she did was speak to me as she always did. The Ripper runs through London streets and brings fear to the people, and yet she still stands her ground. She refuses to run or hide. She protects her family, Naim, at any cost. It's not often you meet someone with her resolve. I ought to strengthen mine in turn.
Jack began to move again. It didn't matter where. The smell of cheap alcohol and rotting meat would pervade unabashedly. They were not unexpected, but rather smells he was all too familiar with. Eastenders had long given up the ability to retch at such horrors. Dry gin quelled the people's sorrows daily, whilst the rotting corpses of animals drenched the air with a humid warmth to blanket those sleeping without a roof. The West End was heaven. Few believed hell could be worse, and so the East End was merely earth. Alright, who's this then? Is this our last person from the intro that we have not seen yet? Maybe? Well, I guess we'll go ahead and we'll find out.
Well, look at that. Does say I did not expect to see you here.
It is our little Red Riding Hood boy with his magic cloak. Very nice. A robed boy glided from seemingly nowhere before Jack.
Of all the times.
He knew this boy well, and it was known with a grimace he spared no effort to conceal. Maybe this guy is the real Ripper.
Could say the same to you. If you've got work to do, then get the hell on with it, Bradley. My word. You got some poor manners. Very poor. Then again, you always was an unfriendly sort. Never thought to be friendly with me. You're aggravating. So stay out of me way. I don't care to stand around and be civil with those in the slime trade. That's so. Oh, but I don't recall you having many friends, ain't that right? Is it 'cause you don't want no one nearby to see you fuck up? Shut up. I said I just don't care to be civil with you. But we got so much in common. Do you have anything in that skull? Leaking secrets to each other's forbidden. I ain't keen to be civil with you, and the organization ain't keen on the idea either. We see each other, we get on as strangers and turn the other way. That's the rules.
Certainly, Jack did know this boy, and he would say whatever he could to keep him at a distance. For someone to, disturb Jack that much, I gotta wonder. The two had many years behind them. There was little from them for Jack to decide they were in any way close.
Almost forgot. Got a particular question.
Bradley, whose manner of speaking was jovial and a constant relative to a drunkard playing an instrument off-key, raised his pitch higher still to express his delight. Oh. Well, he's a crazy person. I'm like, why isn't my enter key going? And then I'm like, well...
You still ain't killed her.
Delight, yes, but there was no warmth to be found. Jack could not see where Bradley's eyes, coated in a glassy dew, were looking.
You're useless, to be plain. Can't even clear up your own damn mess. I'll says it now, I will. I ain't people like her. Lucky people, born to a respectable family, always run round buying pretty things and la-di-da, always have life go their way.
And then, quite abruptly, Bradley's eyes shifted from unfocused to staring into Jack, and he laughed. It was faint laughter on the outside, but to Jack it was pointed, naked in a way that unsettled him.
Really makes me want to vomit. She come over to the East End too, didn't she? Oh, I can imagine the surprise. Booze burning the eyes 'cause its stench is so horrendous. And the streets. Probably enough to make her stop bawling. Poor dear. Poor dear indeed. Sounds like you've been nosing around my business instead of doing your job. Heavens, no. You're a right terrible judge of character. In fact, if you need a hand with something, I would be obliged to lend you one of mine. Perhaps, say, if you need a certain gal took care of.
Jack grabbed Bradley fiercely by the collar. He lifted the petite boy, who, now robbed of movement, showed no hint of trepidation. Rather, he continued to enjoy himself.
Uh-oh. What's this? That's it. Not another word. Come on now, you and me. We're one and the same, eh? See here. Don't you even think of meddling where you ain't supposed to meddle. You got your work, and you shall damn well leave me to mine, as I damn well leave you to yours. I got it. Christ.
Bradley was quick to surrender, on the surface at least.
You step out of line, I will kill you. That clear enough? Crystal.
One was livid, the other content. Jack still held Bradley's collar, but Bradley's boots touched on the ground now, and so any physical discomfort his thin frame may have had was no longer. He joked,
Treat me to something nice sometime, alright? Apart from booze, mind.
The conversation was done. Jack let go, and Bradley adjusted himself briefly. With one last smile, playful, darling, dark, he turned and skipped into an alley not yet brightened by morning and was gone.
Oh, he's a terrible disgrace.
A few off-color oaths under his breath later, Jack hurried on.
Police have certainly taken to their patrols here. Each new murder seems to bring in loads more.
He evaded them well enough until he approached one amongst the East End's many dilapidated homes. So ordinary was its condition that no officer would have seen it worth his time to investigate, if he saw it at all, which was very much to the benefit of its seedy occupants. Jack entered through the back and was immediately greeted with a downward staircase, the end upon which he found another locked door blocking him from going farther underground. Would, rather, had he not already possessed the key. I was waiting for the lock to have been changed. I'm like, oh no. With regular movement that suggested he'd done this many times before, he unlocked the door, slid inside, and locked it again from behind. Down another staircase he went. Each step seemed to drop the temperature. The air became stiff with the cold. When Jack was met with a third door, made from thick oak, he stopped and knocked.
Colonel Morin, it's Jack.
Is it? Very well then, come inside.
A dignified curtness befitting a military man welcomed him from the other side.
Thank you.
I was not expecting you, and I'm a busy man. So, what brings you here?
I've disposed of Emily Whiteley, sir.
Oh, that's why he rubbed her head. Clever. Jack produced a bundle of hairs from his pocket. They were not false evidence. They did indeed belong to her, plucked without her knowledge. Jack had taken great care not to hurt her when they met. Very good care. She didn't even react. The ruse would not take long for the colonel to discover, but any delay was better than none.
I apologize for taking so long.
I dearly hope so. Your slothfulness has made a mess of the situation, far more than it needed to be. We now have Sherlock Holmes, his son, in Scotland Yard sniffing about our grounds, all to investigate the Ripper case, of course. It was the last thing we needed. With every day the police continue to linger about here, our work risks being compromised. The name Jack the Ripper is meant for the most feared assassin in the organization. The name should be yours, and yours alone. Except now the papers are stirring up trouble with this new Ripper. You're clever enough to know who's responsible for this. The signs all point to one nuisance who would relish the moment and use the confusion of your name for personal gain.
Sir, you can't mean...
Silence followed, but they behaved as if words were said. Their locked expressions were an unspoken ritual time and time and time again. More times than Jack could remember. The name Unspoken was always someone whose days were numbered by decree of the Colonel's will, and Jack was his weapon through which lives were claimed. Jack weaponized himself with routine banality, yet today this unnamed victim caused him to stir.
It's Bradley, yes. That boy truly is a mischief maker like no other. He treats murder as something one does to pass the time. Bodies are his dolls, the streets his nursery. If only he would content himself to his work, but the cracks have become readily apparent. He desires death over disposal.
I've seen it myself, sir.
However, he has the professor's support, which leaves me little room for error.
His fingers, began to tap rhythmically atop his desk. The more vexed he was with the dilemma, the more violent these tappings became.
I understand, sir. I believe I can find a proper excuse to dispose of him.
Oh, I could do that. What gives me pause is the proper excuse you've made to dispose of you first.
Colonel Morin pointed a gun towards Jack. The gesture was returned with Jack's own blades.
You still haven't killed Emily Whiteley.
Nothing gets past you, does it?
Bah! What's happened to you? You were a ripper worthy of the name, but here are you, a pitiful boy wearing only the same skin.
Well, hello, Snoke.
Don't call me that.
Oh, Jack the Ripper, what's happened truly? Did you forget that I was the one who found you, starving and on the verge of death at the corner of a workhouse? That I was the one who raised you into the assassin who stands before me today?
Colonel, I know what I owe you, and I shan't forget. Since entering the organization, my life was guided per your orders. Answering to you was me whole life, and I was prouder for it. I murdered men who chanced to spread whispers behind our backs, men so blinded by greed that they were willing to betray you for an easy mint. I did it confident it was to maintain order, to protect your world. But if you kill her, it's my world that will fall to pieces. That gal will soon become a great beacon who will guide those suffering in London.
Wow. That's what he thinks of her? As his world and a beacon that will help the East End? Wow. Such faith. You love to see it. Oh! He knows who her mom is? Jack! Jack, we gotta talk! Jack! Jack! Tell me what you know!
Surely you've noticed. Her mother's...
That is enough, Jack. All I'm hearing from this is that sending you to Harrington was a dreadful mistake on my part. You were to kill her by your own hands, and if not, she will die by another's. She will be no beacon.
The Colonel was not a man to falter simply because the child before him was his. What must be done, and he kept his gun pointed to ensure his will was shown steady.
There are many assassins in this city to whom you've never been acquainted. I could very well leave your final moments to them. But we are on intimate terms, you and I. I am the one who taught you how to kill. It would only be appropriate for me to escort you to Hell's doorstep. Now, consider yourself fortunate to be able to protect my world one last time.
His gun fired, sparks exploded in one swift flash, and it was Emily's handkerchief that saved Jack from the deadly bullet.
What?
The face which stared Jack down was not one of victory, but of confoundment. Oh, did he get him? That would be a twisty twist. The Colonel's eyes were stretched to their limits, and despite the haziness of the room, reflected in those wide eyes were Jack's claws, glistening and at the same time darkened with new blood. 2 men, who thought they did well to stand guard in complete silence, failed utterly. They were now props in an even stronger sense, on the ground, writhing upon being inflicted with a sharp pain that continued to spread in stronger waves. Blood, too, seeped from their bodies. It would not seep for long, however, and the pain would subside. With a disquiet utterance, the 2 went from men to corpses. There was only one left who stubbornly clinged to suffering. Jack stepped ever closer, careful to avoid sheathing his blades into open flesh.
Colonel, I owe my life to you. And I swear that your day spent creating me won't go to waste.
Jack had not yet finished speaking when the colonel's vision tilted. The colonel did not see the moment as an outsider would in some fluid sequence. He was standing, a well individual, and now he was on the floor, his breathing slow and fragile. The biting cold of the ground may have caused a sharp stir in any other circumstance, but for the moment even cold could not be felt. Who's the other person he killed?
I knew this day would come, that you would turn your fangs on me. I just didn't think I would be the one to fall. Among the many I raised to kill, only one stood more capable than you. A pity you could not overcome the weakness of that girl ingrained in you. It will not be long before Bradley claims her. She will be the finest feather in his cap as the People's Ripper.
Each utterance was more strained and less audible than the last, but what he finished brought him contentment. Upon the name of a murderer, his head dropped. His eyes remained half-lidded. Jack closed them before standing. He took out Morin. I can't believe. So quickly.
I only intend to use what you've taught me one more time.
To kill Bradley. Let's do it, Boo.
I'm going to settle the matter myself. Farewell, Colonel. You were the only one to ever school me, discipline me. I won't forget.
Jack, now the sole man breathing in that room, the floor more blood and bodies and places to maneuver, took his time cleaning his iron claws. Day passed into evening, and evening to night. They were soon radiant, more radiant than he ever recalled seeing them.
Bradley, your sense of smell is so decent that a drop of blood for an ordinary man is the same as a river for you. But it don't matter how capable a killer you are, 'cause I will stop you. I swear I will.